My name is Dr. Chris Malinowski. My position is as Director of Research and Conservation at Ocean First Institute. So what we are doing for this expedition for research is we are leaving out of Boca Grande to look for spawning aggregation sites in areas that have collectively a lot of Goliath grouper on them to see if they are or are not spawning aggregations as well. So we know some of the sites from previous work that are spawning aggregations we want to go out to confirm they still are, especially after Hurricane Ian and a lot of the environmental issues that have happened in the Gulf of Mexico, like red tide events. And we also want to look in those same regions for potential new spawning aggregations of Goliath grouper. And so the work that we're doing then is we're going out to these sites with a team of scientists, and we are looking basically to estimate population size and health. And so we'll go down, we are tagging fish, doing a mark and recapture study that gives us abundance and population size estimates of the populations there, of the spawning aggregations particularly. And then we're also measuring fish so we can understand the size and population dynamics. And we're listening for courtship behavior, which is a good proxy for spawning behavior. So all of this together basically will indicate what the population health is and what the size and distribution of fish on these aggregations are during this time of year when they aggregate to spawn, which is primarily August and September. So overall, I've been working on Atlantic Goliath grouper for about 14 years. And this particular project is a piece of that, which is we've recently seen some decline in the population from anecdotal and science, citizen science data and in a couple other ways, but some of those data are fairly uncertain. And so what we're doing is we're going out here doing a more standardized way of studying this population, namely through a mark and recapture study that will give us better estimates of their population size. So the methods and the tools that we're using are generally a modified spear gun. And so with that, we have a bunch of tags that basically we could take down with us. We have an applicator tip at the tip of the spear gun, and we put a tag on that. And so we basically swim down and we would tag the fish with that. So that's tool number one. And that one allows us to basically mark fish day one. We'll go back a little bit later, day two, and we will count those fish that are tagged and untagged, and that's what gives us the estimate of their population size. The two other tools that we're using are, one is an underwater hydrophone, so we can actually listen to courtship sounds that they're making. It's this low frequency boom sound, and they make those at very high intensities during their spawning period, which is particularly intense during new moon period, during the months of August and September, which is basically the darkest night. So they've adapted that in order to avoid egg predation when they release their eggs and sperm. And then the third tool that we use are parallel lasers with a mounted GoPro, and that allows us to measure the fish underwater. You know, we're still working the numbers on the equation, but there's quite an obvious decline of population size on some of the sites that we had anecdotal information that there were population declines. So we were actually out here investigating what we had heard from fishers and divers. And some of those sites that we knew from back in 2010 when we were here working and colleagues was that the populations were, say, on the upper ends of 60 to 70 individuals, which is a good size for spawning aggregation. And now those numbers are way, way down. So why this research is so important is we're still trying to understand the ecology of the Atlantic Goliath grouper. It's a recovering species. It was closed to fishing in 1990 after it was fished to near extinction levels, and it's only been recovering in Florida. It hasn't recovered elsewhere throughout the rest of the range, which goes down to South Brazil, through the Caribbean, and even to West Africa. The important part of this is there is a long-term application. So this is already I mentioned this before, but this work is comparing data that we have from back in 2010, which is about the time when the population was showing signs of decline. And so we're doing sort of a comparison with earlier spawning aggregation work in the same way. And then we also need this to be a long-term study because we want to be able to look to see what the population trends are over time. I am incredibly thankful to Chris and Sarah Riopel and even their daughter Catherine that all came out with us to work on this important project. They donated their time, and we'll be forever grateful for that because this work really is expensive. A lot of science is, especially when you're working offshore, and so having people that are willing to spend their time and donate to an important cause, conservation cause like this, like Chris and Sarah Riopel, these sorts of things are not able to be done without help of people like them. So it's pretty incredible, and they're wonderful people.